Welcome to episode 44 of Talking Prisoner. We have one of Australia's most powerful women in TV with us today. Very exciting. She also played a popular character's mum in 2 episodes of Prisoner in 1982. As well as being an actress, she's also a very well-known and highly respected Australian casting director, known for her work on Prisoner and Neighbours. She's responsible for kickstarting the careers of some of Australia's best-known faces, such as Guy Pearce, Craig McLachlan, Stephen Dennis, Peter O'Brien, Kylie Minogue, Jason Donovan, Jesse Spencer, Kim Valentine, Daniel McPherson, Holly Valance, Delta Goodrem, and Nicola Charles. That's just to name a few. There's many more. And she's also called Australia's most enduring star maker. Welcome to Talking Prisoner, Jan Russ. It's such an honor to have you on with us.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Oh, I'm impressed myself. Thank you.
TV royalty. Amazing.
Oh.
We have you on.
Well, thank you. Yes. It sounds good, doesn't it? Yes, yes. But I've lived a long life.
Yeah, amazing.
So I've done a lot of things, and I've enjoyed every second of it.
You sure have. You sure have. And
yep.
you're looking amazing too. But before we start, we'd just like to get in and get to know your life growing up. Where did you grow up as a child?
I grew up in Maribyrnong.
Maribyrnong.
In the western suburbs. Yes, yes. And strangely enough, I've come back to this side of town again. I lived over the other side, but I've come back to this side of town again because my family was here, and I thought, well, that's, what I'll do. But yes, I grew up here in Maribyrnong, and back then, of course, it was a very simple, little community. And so everybody knew everybody else, and it was a great experience growing up in that environment. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. Yeah.
And what's it like being back in the place that you grew up in? What's it like all those years later?
Well, it's I think you sort of expect to come back and think everything's sort of going to be the same, and you're going to see all those people again, and you come back and you're, oh no, but on occasion I have run into people that I hadn't seen for a long time, but of course it's not the same. Nothing ever is the same. And recently my parents' home was pulled down and units built, which seems to be the great thing these days. And so that was a bit emotional for me because I was actually born in that house.
Oh really?
Yes. I was a home birth.
Oh, wow.
And even my brother said when I was born, well, she's got a great set of lungs. I let them know I was alive. Yes.
Amazing.
Can you tell us about your school, and did you have favourite subjects or not favourite subjects?
Yeah, I did. I loved English because I guess I always had that thing about wanting to sort of play and act. It was something that started off at a very young age when I was about 3. And this giving away my age now, but, back when there was no television and no telephones, and we only had the radio, and on Sunday nights, the family would all come over, and we had the hit parade on the radio at 6:30. And of course, Janet 3 or 4 would get up and sing all the songs on the hit parade. So the family had to sit there and just listen, and anybody would say anything, and my father would say, be quiet, Jan's performing, And so it started off at a very young age. And I progressed at school. I sort of, I used to write plays and do performances and direct them. And arithmetic wasn't my most favourite subject. Then I went on to secondary school, and we did things like cooking and domestic things and like that, which wasn't my favourite either. But I always was leaning towards doing plays and drama, and I joined the local youth club, which started up a drama group. And fortunately, the teacher was a RADA trained teacher from Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And so she came to the western suburbs, to the poor western suburbs, because, to look after these children. And so Judy Johnson took me under her wing, and that was the best thing for me, that I started off with working with someone like that, and we did competition work and things like that. And then eventually years I took over that role at the youth club and directed plays. And then I decided I wanted to do musical theatre, and I joined a local amateur group and musical group, and I did a few shows, quite a few shows, and always played the lead roles. I was very lucky. And then decided one day I wanted to do it, work professionally.
Amazing.
So they had what they used to have years ago was the old Listener In. Ken, you'd remember the Listener In, you know, big magazine.
Absolutely.
And they used to advertise the auditions. And there was a big ad for an audition for Oliver coming up. And had to go to Her Majesty's Theatre. So off I traipsed to Her Majesty's Theatre and did my audition. And then they got me to read. And then they got me to sing a part of one of the characters. And a couple of days later, I got the phone call saying, well, you know, you're in the show, you're going on tour.
Wow.
My parents didn't want me to get into professional theatre because, you know, they said, oh, there's a lot of strange people in there and it's not a good career move for a girl and all those sorts of things, you know, particularly back then. And so I didn't tell them that I was going for the audition. And so when I got the phone call, I obviously had to tell them, well, look, this is what's happening. So my parents said, well, okay, you've done the audition, you've got the job. Oh, there's the dog. You've got the job, do this show and you'll get it out of your blood. Well, that was it. I mean, never got it out of my blood. I literally went then from one show to another in Jason Williamson's Aztec Services and toured Australia and New Zealand many times with shows. Ended up in New Zealand.
Wow.
Because I'm married a Kiwi, excuse me, and did a lot of television and musical theatre over there. I was first female floor manager in television in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
And I did a lot of comedy work and a lot of light entertainment like singing and all of that on television shows and in theatre and straight dramas. And so I did a great deal of work as a performer before I ever got into the casting side of things. So,
Wow.
and then I was in Godspell, and I remember Chris Shield and one of the other guys in the show, he was playing Judas, and we used to sit there and think about what we were going to do. And he wanted to be a television director, and I said, you know, I wouldn't mind getting into casting. You know, I'd done some directing of plays and things like that, and I said, I think casting may be somewhere where I could move into, you know.
Yeah.
I was looking at getting into something permanent. Anyway, eventually, it didn't happen straight away, but eventually it did happen. I got a job at Crawford's Productions as an assistant to the casting director. And so I was there for about 18 months and worked on All the Rivers Run and Cop Shop. And in fact, my son played the young boy in All the Rivers Run with Sigrid and John. And then I got the phone call from Ian Smith. And Ian, of course, I'd worked with in Fiddler on the Roof. So that's how I knew him. And at that time, he was working on Prisoner. And he rang me and said, you know, do you want to go for lunch? I said, oh, yeah, okay, I'll go for lunch. Free lunch, yay, you know. And the lunch ended up being with Lex Van Oz, the producer of Prisoner, whom I had also known in New Zealand. And worked with John Barningham in New Zealand. And so Lex offered me the role of casting director on Prisoner. And so that was a big move for me. I had to give it a lot of thought because I thought, oh my God, you know, am I ready for this? Am I going to be able to cope with it? All of that sort of thing. But I'd learned a lot in that time when I was at Crawford's. And so I decided to take them up on the offer. And that was the start of my career in casting side of things.
Wow. Was there a big rivalry between Crawfords and Grundys at the time? There
was, yes. With Hector Crawford and Reg Grundy, there was that little bit of rivalry, absolutely. And I know that when I left Crawford's, they weren't that happy that I was going to Grundy's.
competition.
The competition, yes.
You worked at Crawford's as well, Ken, didn't you?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
No, I worked at Channel 7.
I thought you were Crawford's. Okay.
Oh,
No,
right.
I did a lot of Crawford's programs like Video Village and Homicide and Consider Your Verdict and so forth.
Wow.
I did a lot of the Crawford shows as an actor, like Cop Shop, Division 4, Homicide. I did all those for Crawford's before I started working there in casting. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So just going back a little step, what did your parents do for a living when you were a young child?
Well, Mum was a housewife, and Dad was a foreman for the government, so they were working class people. And I had four older brothers, but I was a change of life baby. So my mother never expected to have another child.
Ah, okay.
You see, and it happened at her change of life. So I was a bit of a surprise for everybody. You see,
Yep.
and it was really strange because, you know, people sometimes thought my brothers were my father and my parents were my grandparents.
Oh, okay.
So yes. So that was you know, interesting time. Yes, yeah. They were very caring people, and as I say, they didn't want me to go into professional show business. They wanted their daughter to, you know, do the right thing, be a teacher or a nurse or something like that, and do a career, get married, have a family, all those things back then that were what you had to do.
Yep.
And so I guess I was a bit of a rebel in a way, because I didn't conform to all of those things, but they let me go to do what I wanted to do. Although at times my mother would worry about me, say, "Oh, you know, you're off doing all these things." I said, it's fine. You know, I even had a during I did 2 lots of fiddler. I went overseas to New York, and I went to see the show Man of La Mancha, because the guy who directed us here in Australia was also working on it on Broadway. And so he invited me to the show, and then I went out after the show for dinner with he and the producer, and they offered me on Marnie Sumner was the director, on his recommendation, they offered me the same role to work in Broadway and also do a tour of the show. But by that time, I was pretty homesick, you know, and then it wasn't like it is today where you fly over. It's like hopping on a bus these days, you know, and it was like a 6-week trip on a ship to get home, and I was sort of really homesick. So I went, oh, no, I came home, and then I'd been asked to come home to go back into Fiddler on the Roof as well. So I sort of thought, no, I'll go back home. And, you know, but I often wonder, you know, where that pathway would have taken me if I had have accepted that role. I mean, you know, it's certainly different these days because everybody's grasping to do that. So I was very, very fortunate to have that offer given to me, you know, to work on Broadway. So
I say life is exactly like that. I don't know if you ever saw that movie Sliding Doors with
yes.
Isn't life like it just if you got that phone call, if you didn't get that phone call, where your life would head?
Yep. You never know what's going to come up in your life.
Yeah.
You know, it's just extraordinary. And you just either go with the flow or let it go, you know. But I now always say to people, you know, if you never miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, take every opportunity that comes your way, because it's so important. You know, you never know where it's going to lead you. It may lead you somewhere you don't want to go, but oh my God, it may lead you somewhere fantastic. So yeah. Have I learned that lesson?
Yep. And I like to ask people that have worked in theatre, is the advice that you would give to an up and coming actor to really go and work in theatre first, to dip their feet? And
I think theatre is the background and the stabilizing effect of any actor. You know, you do theatre, that gives you so much strength in what you can do. I mean, these days, a lot of them go and do classes for 6 months or something like that, and they're put into a show and they don't know a lot of the basics. And unfortunately, sometimes too, some of the ones that spend 3 years training that go into theatre don't know the unwritten laws of theatre.
Yeah.
The things that you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And we were taught those things by the wonderful older performers back then, who would sort of say, well, this is what you do and this will help you and all that sort of thing. And that's how we learned. But unfortunately, they don't always have that dedication these days. They all want to be stars and they want it instantly, you know?
Yeah.
So you go, well, it doesn't work that way. You've got to serve an apprenticeship like you do in anything else. You've got to work hard. And it's like, with like Kylie and all of that, people, I want to be like Kylie, but they worked hard.
Yeah.
They worked hard. It didn't just happen, but sometimes they expect it all just to present on a golden platter. Yeah.
Straight away.
Oh, you get me started on that, Matt.
Well, it's interesting because you can see the quality in some TV shows, and you can see
absolutely.
And I'm not knocking anyone because I'm not an actor, but you can see in some of them.
Oh yes, I pick it so much these days.
You would, yeah.
It really frustrates me because I know that there's other actors out there that are wonderful actors that would do a wonderful job.
Yeah.
And because it's this it seems to be this youth orientated fashion thing at the moment, and it's lovely to have the young ones and give them an opportunity, but they don't have that background, and they don't have that solidarity of knowing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to get caught up in this world of show business and think it's all glamorous and exciting and it's going to be last forever and all of that sort of thing. But sadly, it doesn't. And I've seen too many of them who've thought that and ended up not in a very happy place.
Yeah.
But those ones who've worked for it and continue to work hard, they can achieve something.
Yeah. So your suggestion is not to go on Married at First Sight to become an actor. It's to go.
Well, no. I think there's a lot of work, and I think I've sort of done a lot of teaching and that for acting, and it's amazing that a lot of them say, "Oh, I didn't realise it was so hard." I thought you just had to learn some lines, And I have this story about once I had this this guy ring me up, and back then I was doing go-sees, and he rang me and said, I really feel that I'm an actor inside of me. I really feel, I can act, I can be an actor. And I thought, oh, really? And he said, oh, yes, I need to come and see you because I know I can be an actor. I said, oh, all right, well, come and see me. Well, he came in, he sat down. I said, so tell me why you think you could be an actor. He said, I feel it inside me that I can do it. And he said, besides, he said, I could do that. He said, I could go to work. He said, I could go to the studio and do the show. And he said, I could be home in time for dinner. I said, thank you very much, but I think you keep your day job. I said, it takes a lot more than that half an hour you see on screen.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, got a few of those interesting stories.
Love it.
Sorry, you're going to say to me, ask your next question, but Jan's already answered it, so we'll move on.
Oh, we have, yes. Hobbies. Do you have any hobbies you like to do in your spare time?
Well, my hobby, I suppose, these days are looking after. Well, I don't look after them because they live in South Korea. My grandsons, and watching what they're up to because they're big celebrities in South Korea.
Yes, I want to ask you about that. So your son is a huge reality TV star in Korea.
Yeah, South Korea.
South Korea, sorry. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. How did all that come about?
Well, he studied Korean at Swinburne, and he went over on exchange for a year, and then he got very sick. Actually, he caught Hep B, and so I thought I was going to lose him. I had to go over, and it was terrible, terrible time, and we had to fly him back with doctors and nurses, and he lost down to 15% of his liver. And anyway, it all regenerated, and he came well. And he went back to Korea, and I wasn't that happy about it. But he had, in that time, he said to me, "Look, I've learned the language." He said, "If I stay home, I'm going to lose it. I need to go back." And by that time, he'd also met a girl, which has become his wife.
Yep.
And so he went back there, and then one day someone rang him and said, "Oh, they need someone for a game show. Do you want to go on?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I'll go on for a game show." So he went on the game show, and he won it. Not a lot of money, but he won some money. And in the audience, it's like Lana Turner. In the audience was a manager who came to Sam and said, "Oh, do you want to do more work?" Sam said, "Oh, yeah, okay, I'll do some more work." So that's how it started for him.
Wow.
But once again, it took him 15 years of doing hard slog and really tricky things. I mean, he did a lot of comedy stuff, and I flew over to do a lot of things as well. But then he got on a show. He was ready to give it up. He said, "That's it. 15 years, nothing's happening. I'm going to go." And then he was offered this role of to go into the Korean Army.
Wow.
And he said, "I wanted to go into the Australian Army." He said, "Mum, they wouldn't accept me because I had flat feet." So he said, "I've always wanted to do it." So he said, "I've decided to do this show." And there were 6 celebrities. He was the only foreigner. And he was on that show for 2 years.
Wow.
Well, that shot him through the roof, because he would sort of do funny things and all of that. And of course, the Koreans wouldn't want their sons to go into the army, and they'd send them off somewhere, and they're going, "Oh my God, here's this foreigner in the army doing all these things, And so, yes, he did that, and that's how that all came about.
Wow.
And then and then the first child came along, and they went on a show called Return of Superman, and that was fathers and their children. And so Sam was on that with his first child, and then the second child was actually born on screen. On screen, on the show. And so from there, the boys are now, the eldest one's will be 6 in July, and the youngest one will be 5 in November. And they've just released an animated movie.
Oh, wow.
That they've done. But they've got their own show on YouTube.
I saw that, yes.
The Will Ben show. And so, yeah, they've got over 1 million hits each, the kids. And now, of course, I'm known as Nana throughout Asia. I've got over 10,000 hits myself, And I get all these messages saying, "Oh, Nana, we love you, Nana. When are we going to see you again, Nana?" Because I've been flown over there a few times to do shows with my son, television shows with my son, and on the Return of Superman show, and they've been here and filmed here in the house a few times and all of that. So I've become known. I stand out a bit, of course. So yes, I've become Nana. So it's changed from Jan Russ to then I became Sam Hammington's mother, and now I'm Nana. So my life has sort of progressed.
You've gone from Australia's most powerful woman in TV to Nana.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you tell us what's your favourite food, and do you have a favourite holiday destination, and would it be Korea?
Well, I do like Korea, but my favourite holiday destination, I think, is in Australia. I mean, I love going up to Queensland.
Yeah.
Or I love Honolulu, Hawaii. Although, now you're getting me going, I love Italy.
Oh, that looks amazing.
Italy. I adored Italy. I loved every second that I was there. And the food there was just magnificent, you know. So, yes. And favourite food, oh, gosh, that's a bit hard, Ken, because I like a bit of everything. I'm a bit of a sweet tooth.
Oh, I love sweets.
Which is probably not the best thing, you know. But I do, you know, I was always known as a bit of the ice cream queen for a while there. You know, I know when I was in San Francisco for the first time and all those ice cream parlors, you know, with all the different ice creams. And, I think I blew up like a balloon because I was eating so much ice cream. But I'm a bit of an ice cream lover. So I try not to have any now.
Oh, you should have. So treat yourself each week.
Yeah, I do on the odd occasion. I just go, no, I'm going to have it, you know. Yeah.
And there's so much to choose from now. There's so many different flavors.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
What's a favorite TV show you like? What's your go-to show that you love?
You know, I love the British shows.
Yeah.
I love the British shows. And I mean, I know it's old, you know, but I love the ones with the wonderful actors like Dame Judi Dench and all those, you know. I mean, watching those people is like looking at a masterclass. Yeah. You know, and that's why I love watching those shows.
Keeping appearances
you
and
learn so much from just watching those people and their timing, and you know, and I mean that the Best Marigold Hotel, with all those wonderful actors in it, and watching their timing and all that sort of thing is you know, that's what I love. Yeah. Although recently, I must admit, on Netflix, I've got into the Spanish films and TV shows. I'm quite liking those because I think some of the acting in that is very, very good.
Yeah. Just on Netflix, what are your thoughts on now that you can binge watch a whole season of shows in one night compared to waiting once a week back in the old days for each show to come in?
I think sometimes they're quite good because what was that that Frankie and
Johnny? Frankie and Johnny?
Which one?
Frankie and Johnny, was it called?
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Jane Fonda.
Yes, that one. I binged that, and it was fabulous because every sort of cliffhanger they left, I thought I can't leave it there. I've got to watch the next one, you know. And if they have a great cliffhanger, that makes you want to, you know, keep going back and watching more. So yes, yeah,
it's amazing.
I think it's called Frankie and Grace.
Oh yes,
Frankie and Grace, Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda.
Where did I get Frankie and Johnny from? Must have been nothing else.
That was a song, and I think it was also
a
film
with Elvis Presley.
Yes,
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, see, us oldies know all those things.
A story from your life was turned into a play called The Show Must Go On. Can you tell us something about that?
Yes. I had years ago, I had a daughter. I gave birth to a daughter and was taken for adoption. Back in those times, of course, it was you were looked on as if you were, you know, bad, and you were brainwashed into saying, you know, you're not capable of looking after a child, and you're not good enough, and a child needs to grow up in a good home, and, you know, do you want your child to be called a bastard? And I mean, all these things you were having thrown at yourself, and the way you were treated in hospital was, sorry, I always get emotional even now talking about it. The way we were treated in a hospital was just appalling. We weren't allowed to talk to the married women, and we were just, you know, shoved around. I was told to shut up and stop making so much noise.
Wow.
Because there was a woman in the next cubicle with her husband having a baby. I mean, and then I had a mask shoved on my face with ether. And I mean, I was there on my own. But this sister came in and just told me to shut up, So all of that, and they just let me rip when she was born, and it was a really not a very pleasant time. It was a very, very hard time. And I ended up contacting my mother, and she came up and she said, well, we'll take the baby home, which we did. And I thought, well, that's good. And then my parents tried to get my one of my brothers and his wife to adopt the baby, but they were trying for one of their own, and they felt probably it wouldn't be right, it'd be a bit too close. And so they went and had a meeting. My parents, my brother and sister-in-law had a meeting. I was left with the baby. And then they came and said to me, well, the baby's going back to Sydney. And I said, well, no. I want her here. And they said, no, that's it. She's going back to Sydney. And she was taken back to Sydney, and she was adopted. She was the woman I stayed with in Sydney, was always telling me that, there was a wonderful family that would look after the child and all that sort of thing. So she was there at the airport to meet my brother, and apparently handed the baby over to them.
Wow.
And it's something that, I did the play and I did the Australian story because there are so many thousands and thousands of women during that time that went through this. And the way we were treated was appalling, and we were all told just to forget it and get on with our lives. And I mean, when I did the Australian story, I had so many people contacting me and saying, oh my God, that was part of my life. And I had one woman come up to me, I was out for dinner one night, and she said, I've never spoken to anybody about it. And she was my age, and she said, I've never spoken to anybody about it, about my child. And I said, well, time to do something about it. Important for you, because it sort of releases something, you hold on to that. So it was a very emotional time in my life, and it's something that you carry with you, and it affects your whole life.
Yeah. Wow.
It's affected my whole life. I've spoken to other mothers who've had babies, their child taken from them, and they feel exactly the same way. Our lives have changed totally.
Wow. Can I ask, without being too personal, have you seen your daughter since?
I have. I've met her, and she has children whom I've met, but we caught up a few times, and it was wonderful. But then after a while, she decided that I think she moved, and she didn't let me know where she'd moved. And so I think she may have felt she just wanted to sort of distance herself. So I haven't heard from her for 10 years or something like that now. Yeah.
Must be so tough on both. I mean, not seeing your mum or your dad for so long, and not seeing your child. It's
exactly, and also for the child.
Yeah.
Child is people say, oh, it's wonderful, they've got a wonderful family, but so many adoptees are still searching, and they feel a total something missing inside them. And one of the first things my daughter said to me, well, what family, has there been breast cancer in the family? What about this? What about that? So there's all those things that you don't know. And then you get into the overseas adoptees, and I have friends who are some of them from South Korea, some from Vietnam, and they feel they have a foot in each country. They don't know where they are. They're a bit lost. Yeah. So it's something that I was talking to someone the other day, and I said, as women, once again, we were the mothers who gave birth to those children. We've been pushed aside constantly and shoved under the mat.
Yeah.
You know, although he did get the apology and I was in Canberra for that. But then I think, you know, the Kevin Rudd thing happened and all the apology sort of slipped under the radar. And so we've always been sort of pushed aside. And I wanted that to be out there.
Yeah. Wow.
People know about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you can't believe that goes on, and it went on, and you know, you would have been an amazing mum back then. Like, you know, why do they?
Exactly, and that's what people say. But you know, why? I said because you know, back then it was your parents made decisions for you.
Yeah.
You didn't make those decisions yourself, even though you tried to. Your father was always, you know, he was the head of the house, and that was it. You know, and once again, it was, you know, you're a female, you're a woman, you do what I say.
Yes,
So
I understand.
I mean, I love my father, don't get me wrong, but that was that era.
Period. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, because my sister, whose name is Jan, was adopted as a baby, and she wasn't told that she was adopted until she turned 21.
Right.
I knew, but I was sworn to secrecy not to tell her. And so it came as a blow when she was about to get married.
Yeah.
That you know, her parents then told her that she was adopted. So I'm sort of coming from the other side of things.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I understand that too, Ken, because I've talked to a lot of adoptees to get their side of the story, because I think it's important to get both sides. And you know, I mean, it's a terrible thing on both sides.
Yeah.
On both sides, you know. And this is what, you know, people don't really understand, and we've never been given a voice to put that across. And so that's, I felt extremely strong, you know, very strong to sort of put that across to people, to let people know what things were like back then.
Yeah.
And how we were treated. And, you know, I mean, we were sort of a, you know, in a way, a bit of a lost generation too, with our children. And, you know, we've never really had a chance to anyone to accept us, really.
Wow. Must have been so hard for you to do that story and to speak about it publicly. I mean, I know it still is now.
It was. And they took me back to Sydney, in Australia Story to, because I was, when I got up there, I was ready to commit suicide. And they took me to where I was standing at the window, ready to jump.
Oh my God.
And that was quite emotional too, because I kept thinking, oh my God, you know, how glad I was that I made that decision to step back.
Yeah.
Because how my life has, you know, and that's why, you know, I think with those people who are in that frame of mind of committing suicide, please, you know, stop and think a little bit, because life is not always going to be so dark as it is at that time. Life can improve. You know, you never know, as we say, you never know what tomorrow brings. And there could be some shining light that happens the next day that you will miss out on, and you miss out on a wonderful life.
Yeah.
So it is, you know, it was a two-pronged thing, I guess, that I wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, you're right. Please reach out if you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Need help in any aspect of life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And particularly in this time, I think, you know, with COVID and all that sort of thing, so many people are feeling down and they're feeling depressed, all that sort of thing, you know, and with everything that's going on in the world, you know, just understand, you know, us older ones have gone through a hell of a lot over the years, and you can get through anything.
Yeah, definitely.
You really can get through anything. All right, it may be hard and you may have to knuckle down and do all that, but, you know, you've got to keep fighting. Absolutely.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. Thanks for sharing that with us, Jan. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Ken.
Tell us a little bit about, I'm pinching your question now, Matt.
Okay.
Where did you train as an actress, and did you train alongside anyone we might have heard of?
Who did I? I did various classes during my time, and well, yeah, it was Rhonda Birchmore was one of them, and some of the other. Well, I can't really remember them all because it was a long time ago. But there are quite a few actors during that time that I'd sort of done classes with. I'd love to remember, Ken, because the memory bank of the youth is not always there.
Mine's not either. Well, moving along a little bit, we'll just move forward a little bit. I'm just keeping an eye on time, Ken. Now, you returned to an acting role in the New City Homicide in 2009.
Yep.
Now, what was it like going back in 2009? Did you have to audition for that role?
Well, I did. I did have an audition, yes. And it was great because the director was a guy called Nicholas Buffalo, whom I had put into Neighbours years and years ago as well. And so I auditioned for it, and I just loved it. I loved playing that role, and of course then on set, it was like going home because I knew a lot of the crew, I knew all the cast, and because Daniel McPherson was in the cast, and a lot of other actors that I'd cast in other shows. So it was a fun time. I mean, it was great. I just loved it.
So were they all shocked when you came on set? I think, what's Jan doing here?
No, they were all excited. They all knew that I was coming on set.
Oh,
and so they were all excited to see me. And after I shot it, I was at an opening night, and the writer, John Bannis, came up to me and said, thank you for, doing such a great job. And then I got a letter from the producers thanking you so much. We were all thrilled to have you on set and all that. Wow. And I was treated as if, well, not that I was the queen coming there, but, I was treated very well. I was treated very well, which I probably needed at that time.
Yeah.
Yes,
wow.
yes,
Amazing.
yes. But I was also doing another show at that time too. And I was rehearsing for another show called Silly Old Buggers, which was put on at the Comedy Festival. So I was rehearsing for that as well, So it was a thing when of the demise of my time at Neighbours, I had things that I had to do.
Yeah. Wow.
And they were fun things to do. So I think that sort of, gave me a lift, which was great. Yeah.
Fantastic.
You also appeared in Divvy 4 and Homicide. Can you tell us any little snippets about those two series?
Oh, well, I did. I think I played so many different roles in them, Ken. I played, nurses and barmaids and all of those sorts of things, all those little ones. And that was through one of my mentors was the fabulous Betty Pounder, who was J.C. Williamson choreographer and worked there. I'd worked with her. And she then went to work for Crawford's. And when I came back but to Australia from New Zealand, I went in and auditioned for her. So that's how I got some of those roles. But that was great too, because a lot of those actors were trained theatre actors also. They'd all come from theatre. So you were working with, wonderful talent as well, which was great. I mean, I had great fun doing all of those shows.
Yeah.
And in fact, I go back even more to People in Conflict. Remember that one?
Yes, I do actually.
It was set in a courtroom, And I think we were all given a breakdown of our characters, and we had to sort of ad-lib a lot of it.
Ah.
A bit like
Yeah.
Consider Your Verdict.
Consider Your Verdict was one. Yeah, that was it. Consider Your Verdict, wasn't it? Yeah.
I worked on.
Oh,
Wow.
did you?
Yes.
That was one of the first dramas, wasn't it?
Very early. I was working on it in 1961 or 62.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm.
Wow. Amazing. Now you knew Bunny Brooke quite well as well, didn't you?
Yes, yes. I worked under her. Well, not under her. I worked as her assistant
Really?
at Corporate. Yes. So I learned a lot from Bunny. She was quite a character.
Yeah.
Yes,
Quite a character.
I know. I worked with her.
Yes. A lot of stories about Bunny. Yes. And many times, Bunny, unfortunately, was her own worst enemy. I mean, she's passed over now. She was her own worst enemy. But she always thought she was better than anybody else, any of the actors, and she'd tell them that. And she'd tell them they weren't any good and they weren't capable of doing the role, that she'd be much better playing the role. And she'd rip strips off them and all sorts of things. So yes, she was quite a character. Mm.
Wow. Amazing. Now we've covered a few questions. We might move on to Neighbours, where you were the casting director. Now you told us how you got on Neighbours, but I just want to clarify with you. So I remember watching Neighbours as a child, and when it got axed from Channel 7. Now Channel 7 burnt all the sets, and then Channel 10 recreated them, but had on the top of them, "We're coming home," and had a helicopter. That was all true, wasn't it? That all.
And then I heard that someone, they hired a big truck and put some false sets on it as if they were moving it.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes, that was, and I mean, that was interesting when we finished at Channel 7, because the fans stood outside with black armbands and red carnations and stood outside, say goodbye to the and then I remember it was the producer and the associate producer and myself sitting in my office with a bottle of champagne, waiting to hear what was going to happen if someone was going to pick up the show, because I mean, the Truth or one of those papers had big black TVs,
the old Truth,
axed, and so we were sort of waiting, thinking, oh my God, is someone going to pick it up? Are we going to continue on with the show? What's going to happen? And then we got the phone call saying it's happening, Channel 10 picking it up. So champagne, corks were popped, and we had the celebration. So then it was moved to Channel 10.
And what was it? Was there big differences between Neighbours on Channel 7 and Channel 10 behind the scenes?
Yes, I think so. Channel 7 never put in the effort in publicity and all of that sort of thing that Channel 10 did. Channel 10 were fantastic with publicity, setting the show up, all of that. They were just amazing. There was big publicity things every weekend, Kylie and Jason or Guy and all that be off interstate giving away free TVs and all that sort of thing. It was great. And, the shopping centres, and it was constant publicity that we got with 10. They were amazing. Yeah. Brian Walsh and Eileen O'Shea worked with the publicity people.
Now, Brian Walsh is now the managing director of Foxtel. Yes.
Absolutely. He certainly is. Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
He was fantastic with his ideas.
Yeah. See, I remember all that as a kid. I remember them all going to pantomimes in the UK and all the shopping centre.
Yes, they'd be off every Christmas or whatever to do pantos. And then at one stage, we had hardly anybody left in the cast because they'd all decided they wanted to go to England to do these pantos. And we went, well, hang on a minute. No, we've got to, work this out somehow. We can't have you all leaving at the same time. We've still got a show to do,
Yeah. Wow.
So that was an interesting time. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Now we get to Neighbours as compared to Prisoner. Did you find there were differences between Neighbours and Prisoner as far as you were concerned, working on both?
Yes, yes. With Prisoner, because it was such a strong female cast, and they were all strong actors, wonderful, wonderful actors, all theatre trained. And, you know, it was always a joy to audition them because they knew exactly what they wanted and the characters that they wanted, you know, that they were required to play. So you knew they were always going to do a great job. Neighbours was a different ball game because they wanted young people, good looking. And so therefore they didn't always have a lot of experience or theatre experience. So I had to sort of look beyond the good looks and look for other qualities. And it was important for me to get to know them, to know their personalities, because that also helped, and to know how they would cope under situations. Whereas, I mean, with Prisoner, with those actresses, you didn't have to worry about that because you knew they could do whatever, you know. So there was that big difference. I mean, some of the kids hadn't really done very much at all. So there was that.
yeah.
And there was all ages and different characters. And although, you know, we did have initially different ages in Neighbours, which was very important, with your Anne Haddies, who was wonderful, and the younger ones. And that, to me, really made a difference, because you need that support of the older experienced actors with the younger ones. And this is where they get it all wrong these days, you know.
Yeah.
It's once again, they think, oh, you know, young ones can play older, and you go, no, 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 they can't, you know. You need the older ones to support the younger ones. And what it does, when you've got the older experienced actors, it lifts the younger ones' performance.
Yes. Yeah.
It lifts their performance. Whereas if you've got all young ones, their level of performance is sort of, you know, dull and boring. So yes, yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, there was a big difference for me as far as Prisoner and Neighbours were concerned.
Yeah.
But at one stage there, I was casting the two of them.
Oh, you're working both at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So that was a bit tricky.
Yeah, it would have been.
Setting up instead of, you know, the other one finishing and trying to get that done. Yeah, yeah.
So speaking of Prisoner and Neighbours, obviously both created by Reg Watson, who created so many TV shows. How well did you know Reg?
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful man. Very gentle man. And I loved Reg, and he was always such a gentleman and so talented. And it was Reg who rang me and said, we're thinking of doing a new show, Jan, and we want you to, you know, look at the scripts and set up a cast list and all of that sort of thing. And I'll send you the scripts down. And those scripts, the working title was called Living Together.
Oh,
before
wow.
it was called Neighbours, it was called Living Together. And so that was the title, working title of the show. So that was the start of it for Reg. But yes, I have a great deal of, you know, respect and time for that man. He was absolutely wonderful and very talented.
Yeah, wow.
Very talented. He created so many shows.
Were you overwhelmed at the time when he said, you know, you got to cast the whole show? Here's the show, cast the whole.
It was, because I'd never sort of cast a new show like that before, but it was exciting because people always ask me, you know, how do you do it? And I think, to me, I look at it like a jigsaw puzzle, putting a jigsaw puzzle together. And it's always, it was exciting because you had families to put together, you know.
Yeah.
And I loved doing that. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, yeah.
So you're responsible for the Ramsey family, Max and Maria, and I mean,
Dasha and Francis, yes, all of those, absolutely. We, I remember the producer, and we cast the show, and we had a night with everybody together. And we thought, we want to see how they all get on together, if they all meld together. So the producer and I, excuse me, producer and I were sitting there together watching, and all of a sudden we both turned to each other and we went, we've made a mistake. We went, yeah, we've got to get someone else in that role. He's wrong. He's not blending and working with the others. And that was Jim Robinson character.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Alan Dale.
So we got Alan Dale in, who was doing, I don't know whether he'd finished or he's doing a bit on Possession at the time. So we had to ring Reg Watson and say, look, Reg, we think, Alan might be right for this role. And he went, oh, I don't know, And we said, well, we know the one we've got is wrong. He's not going to work. So Reg finally agreed that, okay, yes, Alan can come down and do it. So that was a big change.
Wow. Can you mention who was originally playing Jim Robinson or not?
What?
Can you mention who was originally going to play Jim Robinson or not?
Right, I've never heard it. Never heard Robin something his name was.
Okay.
Yeah, Robin Harrison, I think.
Wow.
So heard from him or heard of him again.
That was
That was it. That was his big moment of glory, and that was it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Can you tell us about some auditions? People like Kylie, Jason, Guy, Craig, Stefan, Natalie, and other memorable cast members, and how they went?
Yeah, I can remember two standout ones, of course, Kylie, and I can remember her coming in, and she was such a shy little thing, and so I sat her down, ready, just going to do an audition, and I looked at the camera, I looked at the monitor, and I went, oh God, there's something going on here. There's something going on with this young girl. And so we, I worked with her and she just lit up that screen. And I often say she was like, a little rosebud that has opened and grown into this beautiful rose. Yeah. And she's just been amazing because she's recreated herself so many times and she's still doing wonderfully well. I mean, I think it's fantastic what she's done. And then Jason, I remember Jason's very well because he came in to audition and he'd just come from school. He had a school uniform on and his tie all, right. And it was a hot day. So, boys of that age are a bit stinky. And so we came in and he did the audition and I went, oh, good, great. And the same thing, I thought, no, this kid's got something. And so I offered him the role. And he spoke to his dad, Terry, and Terry had said to him, no, I want you to finish your HSC, and so Jason got back, he said, no, I've got to finish my HSC.
Oh, wow.
I can't do it. So I said, fine, no problem. I said, I know something will come up in the future, so don't worry, I'll remember you. And so when I think we went to Channel 10, I knew Darius Perkins was playing Robinson initially. Sure. And then we offered it to Jason.
Wow.
And so Jason was able to do it at that stage. So he's gone on and then he's just sort of performed at the Queen's Jubilee concert, Yes. So it's fantastic.
Is it like watching your kids grow up?
Oh, absolutely. I'm that thrilled for them. I'm that happy for them.
Yeah.
I had a phone call last night from one of the actors in the show who said, oh, Jan, I just want to thank you. He said, because, you changed my life. He said, if you hadn't have, given me a role on the show, I wouldn't have done this, 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 and this. And he said, you changed my life totally, you know. So I've had a couple of them
Wow.
come back and say that, which is nice. It's nice to hear that, you know. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then, what are the other auditions? Oh, I one of the auditions from Prisoner that I remember, which was the Boy George character.
Oh, Peppy Trevor.
Well, that day I walked out into reception and I went, oh, wow. All the actresses had dressed up in various stages of the Boy George character.
Oh,
I mean, it looked amazing. It looked like a party, a dress-up party. They looked fantastic.
wow.
And that's one audition I remember so well, because that was wonderful. I mean, you know, different times they'd come in with, you know, a different work shirt, or if, you know, they're being constable, the guys would have the blue shirt or something on, but this whole Boy George outfits that were coming in were, whoa, it was amazing. So I've never forgotten those. That really stands out in my mind.
We've got Peppy coming on soon as well. So
I love Peppy. Yes.
Yeah. I won't give too much away, but she said, so Mari Trevor, who was a producer, she didn't know that she was coming on the show.
No, that's right. Mari stepped away.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if many fans know this, but you signed Hugh Jackman to Neighbours.
Yes.
At one stage. So that is true.
Yes, it is true. I signed him up to come into Neighbours. Yes. And he was getting ready to start, and he rang me. And he said, oh, Jan, he said, I know I'm contracted to start on Neighbours. He said, but I've been accepted into Whopper. And he said, I've always wanted to go to Whopper. You know, he said, it's a big deal for me and I'd love to do it. And he said, I'm, you know, asking if you could let me out of the contract, but, you know, if you don't, well, I guess I got to do it. You know, I got to take the consequences or whatever. And I said, look, Hugh, I understand totally, you know, as a past performer myself, I understand that. I said, you go ahead. I said, I'll recast it.
Wow.
So I did. I allowed him out of the contract to go to Whopper. And I think he's mentioned it so many times, you know. So, yeah.
Wow. That's one thing Ian Bradley said about Grundy's was good in that sense, where they would release you out of contracts and to go on to do other things. And yeah.
Well, sometimes they did, not always, but yes. But Grundy's was like a family.
Yeah.
You know, and it was wonderful working in that environment. And it was a bit like Crawford's at that time, where they were very family orientated. You were all close knit and all that sort of thing. And Grundy's was exactly the same. And they supported you in whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah. Wow. I've covered my question. Ken, move on to yours.
Okay. How did you know when you'd found the right actor for the right character?
Well, one's got to look initially at the character breakdown and find out what they've like, what they're going to be doing, all that sort of thing. And it's your knowledge of the actors that helps you make a decision. And so you have to look for the right person. And also you've got to know your actors. I always used to go out and I'd go to the theatre, I'd go to wherever I could to get to know as many actors.
Oh, really? So you're like a scout out looking for...
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's a job. I mean, that's what you got to do as a casting. They don't do it these days because I go to these shows and I never see any of them. But that's what I would do, because you've got to scout around and find actors, you know? That's
yeah, wow.
what it's all about, you know? And so I would go to shows, I'd go to different classes, I'd go to amateur shows. I'd go to all sorts of productions, looking for talent.
Would the theatre know that on the night? Oh, you know, Jan Russ is in the audience. You know,
not always. No, not always. No. I would sort of, sneak in. Sometimes the agent would offer me a ticket to go and see one of their clients in the show, and then you'd see other people and all that sort of thing. So that also happened. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Apart from the Jim Robinson role, was there any other? And I'm not saying throw anyone under the bus, but did you have any regrets in anyone that you've casted in your career for a show?
Probably the odd one or two. We all make little errors along the way, don't we? We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you.
No, that's okay. I'm being cheeky. It's all right.
Did you ever think someone in one role would have suited a different role more suitably?
That's interesting, because I remember when I auditioned Kylie, I also auditioned Annie Jones for the same character back then.
Really?
And so Kylie was the one that got the role. But when the character of Jane came up, I thought, no, I remember Annie from that audition. And so that's how Annie was then cast into that role, into Jane
Annie
Harris.
Jones was originally going to be Charlene.
She auditioned for that role. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. And she really suited the role of Jane. I remember.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, that was it. And it's sort of like we often see it about Toadie, Toadfish with his mullet back all those years ago. And I remember, they said, his character name's Toadfish. And I went, oh, God, we've got to have something that's got to have that image,
Toadfish.
So then I'd sort of seen something of Brian. I thought, I'll get him in because he's got that mullety thing. He looks a bit that's why they could call him Toadfish, And so that's how that happened with him, Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, one of my other favourites, of course, was casting Janet Andrew-Wather as Reb. And I remember Janet coming in, getting her in, because that character needed to be so strong, and and I thought, I'd been an admirer of Janet's work, and I thought she's got that strength in her performance to be able to carry that off. And so I got her into audition, and of course she just took that character on and just blew me away in the audition. But of course she had very long hair. And they were going, oh, no, because she's got, no. And I went, hang on a minute. I said, let's ask if she can cut her hair. I said, and then, that's going to make a difference. Oh, right. They said, okay. So that was how that came about.
So whose idea was it to give her the whole James Dean image? Was that you?
Well, it was sort of become a bit of a combination agreement of the Reb, the character Rebel.
Yeah.
What she needs to have that look
hair
and appeal, and so the long hair would not have suited that character. And of course, even when she had her hair cut, and I can remember going, oh my God, she just took on even more of the character of Reb. It was, and she, she played a wonderful role. Yes. She was one of my faves, although I did love the Freak.
Yeah.
Anything the Freak was in, I thought, oh, what's going to happen next,
And did you cast Janet for Neighbours as well?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. And strangely enough, I was thinking too, I cast Anne Charleston as Reb's mother, and then I cast Anne as Madge Bishop, as well. But that then again is you're dealing and handling with true actors
Yeah.
who can play different roles and become different characters, where a lot of these younger ones are just going to play exactly the same.
Yeah.
They don't have that background training, understanding, you know. So
Play
yeah,
parts. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. I think we've covered your question, Ken. Now, recasting roles. Now, I remember there was a big uproar when Caroline Gilmer, who played Cheryl Stark, became sick,
Yeah.
and then recasted Colette Mann
Yes,
for her role.
that was a chaotic day. Chaotic day. Yes, it's happened a couple of times. That happened, and that was, and I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, I've got to find someone that's sort of going to be place Caroline. Well, how am I going to do that? And I thought, well, you know, Colette is probably the nearest, and that's how Colette got
the
cast in
part.
the role.
Yeah,
But that also happened with Carla Bonner,
that's
because
right.
another actress I'd cast in that role, and she was causing a few problems on set. And so we decided we better get rid of her. And they said, well, we're going to do a quick recast. And I went, oh, right, okay. And so I rang Carla's agent and said, you know, I really need to see Carla. And he said, well, actually, she's standing right here in front of me with a baby in a pusher. I said, get her in here immediately. So she came straight to the office, did the audition, did it, and started work straight away.
Wow.
So that was it.
That's how it started.
Yeah. And then there was another one that happened out on set. One of the older actresses, she went out on set and she really lost it a little bit. You know, she wouldn't do it. And they rang me from the location and said, oh, look, you know, she's lost it. She can't do it. What are we going to do? I said, oh, I've got someone else I can send out straight away. So I sent out Esme Melville, and I knew Ez would do it. She just went out and did it, and, you know. So, yeah, it's happened a few times.
Wow.
What happened, I think, you know, people have had a bit of an accident, and, you know, I think at one stage, Ryan Maloney broke his arm, so he had to shoot around all of that, so you couldn't see a broken arm. And, you know, so, I mean, there's lots of things that have happened.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
Over the years in different shows that people don't know what's gone on. I think one time, and we had to put Anne Charleston in a wheelchair suddenly to rewrite because she'd done something to her ankle.
Oh my gosh.
You know, so how are we going to work this? Oh, let's write her into a wheelchair, you know, quickly. So lots of rewrites being done. So yes, yeah.
Wow.
So there's lots of fun things going on behind the scenes, more than what's happening on the screen sometimes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Did you actually have anyone to collaborate with on a daily basis, you know, as part of the job, or were you it?
Well, initially, Ken, I was it for the however many years. And then things started to sort of change, that I would talk with the director. Then it became in the last few years, then it was the producer and the wardrobe person and the makeup person, and, you know, it just got a bit out of control because everybody has their own opinion and all of that sort of thing, and it was just getting a bit crazy, you know. Whereas I preferred it. And I think, you know, it was getting to the stage too that they wanted personalities, or someone who had a profile or something like that, or how many hits online.
It's all about how many Instagram followers they have these days.
Exactly. Hey, I've got over 10,000 now. But yes, it became like that. And to me, that's not really casting.
Yeah.
It's not casting. I mean, I think it's sort of changed a lot now, and even I see on screen.
Yeah.
You know, because they do a lot of self-tests now. That's the in thing, to self-test. and you don't go into an audition room and actually audition with someone, and maybe a bit after you've done a few self-tests you do. But I don't see any point in a self-test. To me, I think it's, you know, a waste of time. You need to communicate with the person. You need to get to know the person, their personality. You need to know if they're going to get on with other people. I mean, if they don't get on with the other actors, I mean, that's going to be a, you know, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So there's all those things that need to be looked at. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that about self, you know, they do the self-test on Zoom. So do you think as a casting director, they could get across what you see on Zoom compared to being in front of you?
Look, you know, in doing a self-test, you're assuming that you know what the director wants or the producer wants.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could be quite wrong, you know, and sometimes you need advice from the director to say, no, let's do it this way. This is what we need from the character.
Yeah.
And they give you a better performance. Whereas if they don't know, they're not giving their complete performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just think, and you know, to me, it's putting everything now back onto the actor. Whereas the actors now are buying, you know, they've got to have their own video recorder, their own lighting system. They've got to have all their computers that they can send off and do all of this. So it's costing them quite a lot of money to set themselves up when they're not always getting work.
Yeah.
And I just think that's very unfair on the actors. I mean, I'm always on the actor's side, but I that's my personal opinion. Yeah. I don't think you can tell from a self-test all the things that you need to know of, and you can't also tell if they can take direction because you're not directing them, and that's very important.
Yeah.
You've got to know if they can take direction and if they can walk and talk and not fall over the furniture. Basically, you know.
What your time on Neighbours, did you have ideas for characters? So you were able to sort of suggest, how about we bring this family in, or how about we have this character? I've got an idea of who I can cast for that.
Well, sometimes what I would find actors, and I'd go to them and say, I found this actor. Let's write a character. Daniel McPherson was one of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was in Sydney, and his agent said, oh, I want you to meet this young guy. And I said, oh, okay, I'll meet him. So I met him, and I was, you know, I thought he's really got something. And so I went back and I said, look, there's this young guy I've auditioned in Sydney. I really think he's got something, and I really think we need to put him into the show, and we need a character written for him. So it took them a couple of months to get the character involved in the show, because I mean, a couple of months later I rang him and said, okay, you're in the show, and he was a bit surprised because it had been so long. He didn't think anything was going to happen, you know. So that's happened on a few occasions.
Wow. Amazing.
Can you also tell us what's the process for casting a family?
Well, you know, I always sort of enjoyed that. And I mean, I think you've got to find similarities in a family. I mean, it's pointless getting people because you think, oh, get that one, and that one, because, oh, they're good actors, just put them all together. And that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think you've got to find them that they connect. So when you find a family or you find groups, what I would do is get them together and then mix them up to see how they all work together in an audition situation. And that really showed a lot, instead of just picking them out one by one. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know, it's not going to work. So I would get them together and say, all right, I want you 5. I'd get maybe 5 in and then work them, and then I'd get another 5 in and work them, and then maybe I'd say, oh, I want 3 from you and 2 from you, and get that lot in, or something like that, and work until I went, that's the combination.
Who was your favourite family that you put together?
Oh, well, who could not say the Kennedys?
Kennedys.
I mean, you know, the Kennedys have, you know, outlived it, haven't they? They've been there forever.
They sure have. They sure
Mm.
have.
Exactly.
You also spotted Nicola Charles around the building when she was there for a game show. Were you already looking for the character of Sarah Beaumont, or did she become invented after you came across Nicola?
I didn't know she was there for a game show. I thought I was introduced to her by Scott Michelson. But I had that character coming up, actually. And when I met her, I sort of thought she could be, you know, a possibility for this role, because I mean, she was a gorgeous looking girl.
Yeah.
And so that's how that character, and I thought she would be a good foil in a way with Alan for what went on a bit later on in the scene, because you had to write up with, you know, follow-up stories. You're ahead with everything, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, no, Nicola's great. She's amazing.
Yeah. So she had some really good she had some really interesting scenes.
Yeah, she did.
And I think she enjoyed working those scenes too.
Yeah, definitely. She speaks very highly of you. Did you have any favorite characters on the show?
Oh, God, too many to.
Too many.
Yeah, it was a lovely. What I'm saying, back in that time frame in the 80s and all that, it was a wonderful family feel of the cast.
Yes.
They were all close mates. It was lovely. It was a good feel. So, I mean, I just loved them all in that time.
Yeah.
They were just a great group of young people and the older people as well. You know, they were just a great group. And, you know, I mean, they had people like, you know, Anne Hattie there, and who was wonderful. And she was like everybody's grandmother. You know, everybody loved Anne.
Yeah.
So she was there. So, yeah, it's hard to sort of say who my favourite characters, but one of the favourite scenes in Neighbours that I loved was a scene with Anne Charleston, Myra de Groot, and Vivian Gray.
Oh, Myra de Groot and Vivian Gray. I wanted to ask you about them.
And they'd all been to the bowling club. They're all dressed in their whites. And they had the accident with the fire hydrant.
Yes.
And they all got drenched and everything. I was on location that day. And that scene with those three women was just hysterical. It was just hysterical. I love those three working together. And it was interesting because I went to Grundy's early on and said, oh, look, I've got this idea for a new show and I'd like to do an Australian version of Golden Girls with someone like those three, you know?
Yes.
And they said, oh, no, we want to cater for the young people. We don't want the older ones. And then the big bosses from England came out at one stage and they had to talk to us and they said, you know, if you've got any ideas of any new shows, possibilities. So I went to the head honcho and I said, look, I've had this idea. What do you think if we did an Australian version of the Golden Girls? Oh, fabulous idea. He said, put everything together, take it to the development department. And he said, you know, I did all that. I got all the information, did a lot of research, put it all together, went to the development department and nothing happened. But I think we missed out a lot because I always felt that with some of those wonderful older actors of the comedy times, you know, that are long since dead, I would have loved to have done a series with them because they were amazing.
Yeah.
And with vaudeville and their timing and their comedy, a lot of the comedians today could learn a hell of a lot from them. And I just wish that was something I could have done.
I think that's one of the best ideas. That would have been such a great show.
Absolutely. I tried so hard to get that going, but no.
Wow.
And that was really disappointing because, you know, at that time we had those wonderful actresses to sort of, you know, who bounced off each other and were just hysterical.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you cast Myra de Groot and Vivian Gray?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And Myra, I met in New Zealand. We actually did a theatre show together, and we did some television work together. So I'd met her when I was in New Zealand.
Wow. She died so young. I mean, she was only 54 or something when she passed.
Oh, well, I was with her when she died.
Oh, wow.
And it was a very my son and I were with her when she died, as was her agent, and it was very sad. And I can remember when she was hospital, you know, the newspapers were trying to get in through the back of the hospital to try and get in to talk to her, to get a story on her. And I mean, here's the woman dying, you know, and also she, the year that Jason won one of his Logies, that's when she was very ill in hospital. She got permission to leave hospital to go to the Logies in a wheelchair. She was brought in a wheelchair, and she had her sequin dress on, and I used to have it. And she sat there for a while, and then Jason dedicated his Logie to her. But sadly, she'd already left to go back to the hospital, so she missed that. Seeing that moment. But he dedicated his Logie to Myra, you know, which was a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Yeah, she was so good on Neighbours, playing Des's mum.
Oh, she was absolutely hysterical. I mean, she'd done so much work overseas. She was in Bewitched, and you know,
that's right. Yes, she was too.
And she worked with Kenneth Williams, and she, you know, her resume was just mind blowing of what she'd done.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So she was sort of a bit of a mate.
Yeah. Amazing actress.
The story, we were going to an opening night of Cats. We got invites, and my son had said to me, "Oh, Mum, you know, I want to go in a limo." I said, "No, we're not going in a limo." And I'd said to Myra, I said, "Oh God, you know, he wants to go on a bloody limo to the opening night." Oh, she said, "Okay." That night, what pulls up outside my house?
A limo.
A limousine. So Sam and I get in the limousine. We go off to Myra's place, have some drinks. Alan Fletcher was there, and then we all go off in the limousine to the opening night.
Wow.
She'd organised it. Yeah, that's the sort of person she was.
What an amazing woman. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Vivian,
she had an incredible life. She had a few children around the world too.
Oh, did she?
She'd had an interesting life, our Myra.
Wow. There's not a lot of information online about her, which is sad. I thought she was great.
She kept things fairly, you know, fairly quiet. I mean, she left me a few things in her will, and I found one recently. She was starting to write about her life.
Oh, really?
But she didn't get very far. She only got into her, you know, with her parents and all of that sort of thing. And I sort of thought, I wish she had have written a lot more.
Could be something for you to finish.
About, well, I don't know. I mean, she never told me everything. So I don't know. We're sort of up in the air about a lot of things that, you know, a lot of things that she did. But she certainly had an incredible career.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah.
Vivian Gray, who is also a fan question as well. Mrs.
All right, yes.
What was it like with Vivian? Was there any similarities between her and Mrs. Mangle?
Not at all. Not at all. Vivian was the most sweetest woman you could meet. Dear thing. She was nothing like Mrs. Mangle. Nothing at all. And sadly, you know, people used to think that she was that, and she used to have stones.
Yeah, she moved to the UK to get away from it all, didn't she?
Absolutely. And that to me was really sad, you know, because she got really frightened, you know,
Wow.
really frightened. But she was just a lovely genteel, I think is a nice word for it, a nice genteel lady.
Yeah. Yeah, she was amazing.
But she was a lovely actress. I mean, she could make, that's once again, you know, with their background in theatre, none of them were like what their characters are like, you know.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, as I would explain to them, you've got to remember that you're in people's homes 5 nights a week, and people start to believe that they know you, that you're in their home.
Yeah.
And that they have control over you and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Now, I'm sure you cast Mark Little. I thought this was a complete genius, whoever brought Joe Mangle in, because he was so different to his mum. You know, she's so upper class, and then you bring this bogan in.
Exactly. Yes.
That was
It's a bit like Francis Bell was similar. Francis was terribly English and terribly well spoken, you know, but he played that character as an Ockerossi, and he said to me, Jan, he said, Jan, he said, nobody has ever cast me, he said, in that sort of role before, and he said, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You know?
Max the plumber with the white beater singlet.
Exactly. Oh yes, and he was quite eccentric because he'd be riding his bike with his umbrella, and it was raining and all that. He was a very eccentric character. Sadly, he jumped off a building in New Zealand and committed suicide.
Yeah, it's so sad. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very sad.
Now, Matt, Jan's already answered the next question, so
yes.
you.
Now, you also worked as an associate producer and assistant producer during your time on Neighbours. What was it like being a producer compared to casting director?
Well, I guess one of the main things is that, you know, in that job, it's like an overseeing job of everything. So you have to have a bit of a finger in every pie. So I had to spend a lot more time at the studio. I was a lot more involved in getting into the storylines and things like that. And of course, well, I mean, part of my job anyway was negotiations and all of that. So that was all part of what I had to do. So basically that was mainly what I had to do. Yeah. Was keep everybody happy, really. You know? Make sure everybody was doing the right thing. You know, there were no problems. If there was a problem, then you had to sort of sort it out. You know, that was all part of it.
Yeah.
And there were always problems.
Yeah.
To sort out.
Problem solver. I'm just looking at time, Kim. We might should we move on to Prisoner just to keep the fans happy?
Oh, absolutely. My God, yes.
Sorry. I know you got such a huge career. There was so much to cover. But before we do get to
we haven't even covered yet. So I thought, oh my God, you know,
I know. Now, before we do get on to Prisoner, now just your exit from Neighbours was in 2009. Fremantle decided to use an external casting agency. How did you feel about that at the time? Were you ready to sort of leave Neighbours at that time, or you could have gone? No,
I wasn't. I was told there was, I was told by the executive producer, oh, we've got a meeting on Monday at 10 o'clock, you know, I want you to be there. And I thought, all right, I thought it was a casting meeting. So I got all my things together and she said, don't forget the meeting on Monday. Oh, no, that's fine. And so I got all my things together and I went in and when I walked into a room, the HR person was sitting there. And I thought, oh, hello. Something's going on here. So I was given 4 weeks notice.
Just like that?
Like that.
Wow. And you were on the show for 24 years, wasn't it?
24 years plus the time before that, which was doing the preparation and everything before we started shooting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was absolutely devastating.
Yeah, it would have
Absolutely
been.
devastating. And the actors have been told that I had made that decision myself.
Wow. And you hadn't, obviously.
No. Well, I mean, I had a bit of a took me a bit of a breakdown. I sort of had a bit of a panic attack and all that after all of that, because it was just so devastating to have that happen after all that time. And I just think they wanted, you know, the youth thing again.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, experience and knowledge and all that was not important.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I know some of the cast were a bit, and then like a month later, I get a phone call saying, "Oh, do you want to have something?" I said, "What do you mean? A party?" And they said, "Yes." I said, I've been away for a month. I said, "You had enough time to organise something?" I said, "No, thanks very much." I thought I could not believe that.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm.
And what are your thoughts?
That day, the final day, I was rehearsing for Silly Old Buggers, and I went along, and the cast there had champagne and nibbles and everything for me because they knew that was what had happened. Mm.
Can't believe that 24 years and not even a
No.
party or
My 20th year, they gave me a big party.
wow.
Mm. Mm. So no one from Neighbours was there on the day that I left.
Crazy. And what are your thoughts on the acting of the show?
I think it's sad, but I think 37 years is a long time. And I think, you know, there's always an end. Nothing lasts forever. Yeah. Unfortunately, you know, there is always an ending somewhere along the lines. It has to finish. And I think maybe it was time for it to finish. You know, yeah. I think it's iconic, and I think it's something that, you know, 37 years for an Australian show is quite phenomenal. You know, so it will go down in the history as the longest running show in the country, which is great. Yeah. But it is sad because it's another drama that we're losing. And it was a good you know, training ground for young people, which is now lost.
And that's exactly what Zimmer Anderson said a few weeks ago on our podcast, that she said Neighbours was such a training ground for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she said the exact same thing you just said.
Well, so many, it was a training ground for them, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, all of them, basically, it was a good training ground. And that in itself is sad too. So, yeah, but as I say, all good things must come to an end at some time. But it is sad that it's finishing. But you know, one hopes that we can get another drama happening, and that's one of the things that I feel too, that we're losing another drama. We're getting all these reality shows and these terrible American shows and all of that. I'm over it, you know.
I know.
Over it, well and truly. Oh, and these reality people. Oh, Lord. Oh,
no.
Oh, give me a break.
Reality people think they're bigger than the actual celebrities.
Exactly. Oh, I know. They think they're all big stars. And you go, sweetheart, you haven't done anything, you know? Whoa. Here's some of them have got their noses out of joint because they weren't invited to the Logies. And you go, why should you be invited to the Logies? Darling, you haven't done anything, you know.
I was with Tony Barber about a month ago. He was shooting a show for Channel 7, a funny show, Where Are They Now, and everything. And they
I saw it. Yes.
And anyway, there was a couple from Maths there, And Tony said, "Who maths? What's maths?" And it was hilarious. And but the people in maths thought they were so like
big stars. Yes,
stars.
I saw that, and I watched that show, and I watched them walk into the room as they walked into the room, presented themselves, and all the actors and that turned around and go. And I thought, I love it.
And he was there, the Bryce or whatever his name was, and he just thought he was bigger than.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow. I know, but I love the expressions on everybody else's face. They were blank, going, "Well, who are they?"
I think it was Channel 7 trying to stick it up Channel 9. We got people.
Oh, exactly. There's always been that sort of, little bit of competition, isn't there, between the networks? Yeah.
All right, Ken, do you want to kick off Prisoner?
Yes. Now let's get to one of the greatest Australian TV shows of all time, Prisoner.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You first worked on Prisoner as an actress, playing the part of Mrs. Daniels, who was the mother of established character Maxine Daniels. Now, I've got a question here from Coventry in England. This is Jay Shaw, and he asks, "Hi, Jan, what was it like to play Mrs. Daniels, Maxine's mum, on Prisoner, and what was it like working with Lisa Crittenden? Really looking forward to watching this episode."
Oh, well, thank you. I enjoyed my time playing Mrs. Daniels. I sort of felt probably maybe I wasn't old enough to play the role, but anyway, I played it as old as I could. And it was fun being on set, and it was great working with Lisa. She was a lovely person to work with, and we hit a rapport straight away and really worked well together. And it was a good environment, and we had a good director there, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of my pleasurable times because I loved Prisoner, and I loved working with those actresses, and I mean, they were actresses in the true sense of the word. I mean, I know that, or actors these days, but the word is bandied around so much, and I don't believe a lot of them are, but they were, wonderful actors to work with. So I thoroughly enjoyed playing Mrs. Daniels, and I loved working with Lisa.
Yeah, great characters. And Mrs. Daniels was on Neighbours, and Hattie, Mrs. Daniels.
Exactly. And it was interesting because I was at one of the prisoner reunions at the Forum many years
Oh, the
ago.
one were you at the 2000 one? The one in 2000?
Yes, it must have been, yeah.
Yeah, I was at that one. That was amazing.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It wasn't you that came up to me, was it? Because, and it was wonderful because the suddenly, it sort of went dark, didn't it? And then on the stage, the backlight and the scrim was there, and the cast started to sing the theme song, and then the scrim slowly went up, and it was just the most,
I felt that in the room. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, you could feel the whole room just go, and it was interesting because a bit later on, one of the fans came up to me and said, "Oh, you played Mrs. Daniels." I said, "Oh, right, I forgot my character's name. Thank you for reminding me." That was an amazing night because there were fans all over the world.
I know.
It was an incredible night. And, at that time, we sort of thought, wow, Prisoner had finished and still this sort of reception. And here we are, like, 30 years later, and people are still talking and interested and fans of Prisoner.
Yeah.
Which goes to show what an extraordinary show it was. And I don't believe, and I don't know if you'll both agree with me, but I don't think there's been another show that's come up to that. I mean, all right, some of the other shows, the sets are better. I mean, sometimes the sets would shake and all that sort of thing. But I mean, the level and the strength of the performances were truly wonderful, you know, and it was quite brutal at times, and it covered so many different areas of life, but it still had warmth and still had humor, but it could be brutal. And I just and because it was all female and strong female characters, that's what I loved about it. That's what made it special for me.
Yeah, wow. I remember that night very clearly. I took my mum. My mum was a massive Prisoner fan. That's how I got into Prisoner as a kid.
Right.
She had no idea where I was taking her, and I took her there. Yeah, then she found out. But obviously, I mean, I remember that moment where they all appeared. I could hear everyone just, the silence was like, you know, unbelievable.
It was a very, very special moment, wasn't it? It was just extraordinary. Yeah. I've been to a few other of the reunions since then, but none have ever come up to that.
No, never.
Nowhere near that night. It was just amazing.
Ken?
Now, do you know why Mrs. Daniels was later played by Mari Redshaw and then by Bernadette Gibson at Maxine's funeral?
Because I wasn't available to play it. I was otherwise engaged, so I was not available to do it. So they had to get someone else.
Recast.
They had to do a recast. Yes. And that, you know, I mean, that can happen sometimes because you're not always sitting there waiting for the phone to ring to go back again. You know, you have other jobs that you get off and you do that, and then you're unavailable when they call you. So, you know, that's it. And if they've already written it, they can't do much about it. They've got to continue to do it. They can't do rewrites.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
We've spoken about my question, Ken. Move on to yours.
You're always passing the buck. Have you ever seen the show prior to working on it, either as an actress or casting director, or were you aware of the actual show Prisoner?
Oh, yes, I was aware of Prisoner before I, A, was there as an actress, and B, obviously before casting the show. I was a bit of a fan of the show, even before I got the role on the show, because of course I wanted to have a go at it. And that's why when they offered me that role, I sort of said, yes, I'll play it. I want to be on the show. So yeah, I was a fan of the show. I really, as I said, that's one of the things I loved about it. I loved because it was a strong female cast.
Yeah, sure was. Did you have a favorite character on the show that you loved?
Oh, look, I mean, God, there's so many different. I mean, who can't not love Lizzie?
Lizzie.
Who can't not love Lizzie? I mean, I can remember going down into the green room and Lizzie sitting there, and she'd always be knitting, and she'd have a little bottle of stout there on the table, and she'd have a little sip now and again, you know, but she'd be knitting away. And I mean, her character was, you know, just great. And I mean, the freak, obviously, because you never knew what was going to, as I mentioned before, you never knew what was going to happen when the freak was there with the glove and the whole thing, you know. So there were so many that over the years that, you know, I sort of enjoyed, but I think those two were quite stand out to me.
Yeah, fantastic.
What shape did you feel the show was in when you joined as casting director?
When I finished?
When you joined as the casting director.
Oh, when I joined it, well, it took a little sort of getting used to working that way and on my own in a show like that, because I hadn't sort of quite done that. I think the show still at that stage was in a pretty good state. I mean, a bit later on, I think towards the end, the storyline started to get a bit stupid. You know, I mean, they used to have cockroach races and things like that, I think, you know. But it was still, you know, in good shape, I think, when I started. Because, I mean, then I brought in your characters of, you know, Reb and Glenda Linscott and all of those. So they became very strong characters. So I think at that time it was still good. Mm.
Glenda, who's a teacher over at Whopper as well now.
Yeah. She's great. She's great, Glenda.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Do you remember who you first casted on the show? Do you remember that back that far?
No, I don't. I know that was something I thought of, and I thought, oh my God, I wonder who it was. I can't remember. It was so long ago.
Yeah.
I wondered if it was one of the male officers. It was one of the first ones. I'm not sure, because I knew had to get a couple of those in, so it could have been one of those.
Male officer. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure the fans, and some of them who are so dedicated, will know exactly.
We've got a whole heap of detectives out there now.
They will know. They will let me know who was the first person I cast, because, you know, the fans know. They know more than me, probably, you know, because they've watched it so many times. I just adore them. They're fantastic.
Yeah, they are.
And I think it's amazing that they have been so loyal to a show for such a long period of time. But and because it was a fabulous show, and I think that's so amazing, but it's so special too.
Yeah.
I love it. I think it's fantastic. Mm.
Did you have any characters when you joined that you felt weren't working out?
Not really. I don't think there were many characters in Prisoner that didn't really work out. I think they all gelled pretty well. Once again, because you knew you were having good, solid actors playing the roles, and you knew they would discover ways to work it and get into their characters. Whereas, you know, the difference, as I said before, with Neighbours, the young one wouldn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they would perhaps do a stick wood type of performance, you know, whereas in Prisoner that never happened, because they were all true actors. Mm.
Yeah.
And so, no, I never had that moment in Prisoner, and I don't know that was I did any recasts in Prisoner either.
Oh, wow. Okay. Was obviously the show was rating so well at the time, and was there a lot of pressure on the show to get the casting right?
Well, always. I mean, always, I think, and I loved working on Prisoner because it gave me an opportunity to give some wonderful female actors a chance to play some really meaty roles. Yeah. And it's something that they, you know, they hadn't had a chance to do. And that to me was, you know, was fantastic. I loved that. And, you know, I know the actors were always exciting to get in and get into a meaty role and do some gutsy stuff. Sometimes it became a bit much for them after a while, but, you know, I think those times, I think I read somewhere that they said, oh, you know, it was maybe too much or whatever, but I think a lot of it was in negotiations that people finished.
Yeah.
Mm.
Can you tell us about a week or a day in your work at Prisoner? What happened? Tell the fans, please.
Oh, well, of course I'd have to read the script. So you were always sort of, once again, working ahead of everything. And I would be given character breakdowns of any new characters coming in. So obviously I'd always be auditioning, looking for people. And then there would also always be negotiations of contracts or renegotiations of contracts. There would be meetings that I would have to have with the directors or the story department or the producer. So there were lots of, all of that was sort of happening. So it was always a full-on day today.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, you'd always be fitting in, a lot of your time would be sort of auditioning at that time, because you wanted to sort of get a backup of people ready to cast. Even in the smaller roles, you had to have that as well. So, you know, you were, and that time, I mean, we were in a little terrace house, and my audition room was a pokey little room with a window and I just had a tripod camera. So it wasn't a full setup studio back then either. And it was just off the reception, which was, and right next door to the music room, which was fabulous, because the music, they'd be playing away and I'd be trying to audition. They'd be quiet. So it's, you know, great fun back in those days. You know, things are not like that now. Back then it was. So yes. So that was always a constant thing happening. So it was always working ahead, because you couldn't leave it till the last minute.
Yeah.
Always working ahead, because they're always, you know, because there always, it wasn't only the main characters I had to cast all the little characters as well.
Speaking of those characters, so the background inmates and things like that, was there anyone that you thought, no, they need to be a central character?
I
mean, there was a few that did become central characters, like
a few of them that did. Yeah.
Simpson and
Lois Colander, I think she was become, and Val Lehman didn't she? I mean, she was. Is she? No,
she was in the very first episode.
Yes, she was. Yeah. There were a few of them that sort of started out, and gradually, I mean, what happened, they were just given maybe a line, how they could handle it, and then they were given another couple of lines, and then it was sort of built up from there to see how they could handle it. Yeah. Wow. I can't remember many of them. Okay. Though. I do remember Lowe was one. Yeah.
Ken.
Peppy Trevor. Just tell us a little bit about Peppy Trevor, apart from the fact that she turned up like Boy George. And being the daughter of the producer, Mari Trevor.
Mm. Well, as I said, Peppy came in, you know, they all came in dressed, and Peppy was, you know, I always cast on the best person for the role, not because of who they were or their contact. I mean, I had many friends who would come to me and say, oh, I want a role in the show. I would say, I can't do that. You know, I've got to find the right person for the role. So I thought Peppy had the edginess that character needed of the ones that I auditioned. And Mari stepped away totally without, she didn't have anything to do with it. And so she only found out after that Peppy had the role. So it wasn't, you know, in any way a favour to the producer or anything like that, because that's I don't believe in that at all. I think you know, you've got to have the right person, or the right actor, the perfect actor for the perfect role. Yeah. And that's always been my philosophy.
That was a question I did have for you. Being you know, Australia's most powerful woman in TV, you would have had a lot of people approaching you to get part of the shows.
He wants to be on the show. He wants an audition. Oh yes. I so many people approached me. It was interesting. Bunny Brooke approached me.
Oh, really?
She was one that came and wanted to get on the show. And as I said, well, look, I can't just create a role. If there's not a role there, I can't give it to you. But I had many friends, and I had people who would roll up and send me presents and, you know, champagne and flowers and all sorts of gifts. I had someone that sent me a tin of mustard saying I'm as keen as mustard. I had someone make a little television set with legs poking out saying, I want to be on television. And someone sent me a box of popcorn with their demo tape in.
Creative people.
Absolutely. Oh my God. And then I had an actor come in dressed as God.
Oh. Sure, it wasn't
like a singing telegram. You know, I want work or something like that. Come into my office and go, oh, right. And then there was another guy who told me years later he dressed as a courier and pretended to be a courier to get in to see me, because he'd tried before to get through reception and they wouldn't let him in. And so he dressed up as a courier to pretend to try and get in to see me.
That's dedication.
That's dedication. That is dedication.
Did you give him a part as a courier?
Oh, he's ended up quite successful, actually.
Oh, really? Oh.
Not through that. I mean, yeah, I did. I think I gave him a part, but he's made a movie and all sorts of things now. I mean, he's produced a movie, not in it, but he's produced a movie. So yeah. So I've had lots of those stories, and I had one guy sent me a tape once, a demo tape, and I wished I'd kept it. And it was an audition tape, but he was talking to himself. He'd do the scene, and then he'd walk around, and then face himself again and say that line, and then he'd walk back and face nothing and do that line. You know what I mean? It was hysterical. And then I had one guy once who came in with his girlfriend, and they sat down and they started arguing. Oh, what's going on here? And he said, have you got the keys? No, I haven't got the keys. You've got the keys. No, I haven't got the keys. And he took off his jacket. And he took off his shirt, and he dropped his pants, and he had red underpants on. And he came over to me, and I'm going, what is going on? And he said, oh, it was a bit of paper sticking out of his underpants. He wanted me to take it out. I'm very tentatively, I'm here to tell you, sort of took it out. And then he went and sat down and got dressed again. I said, well, could you do it again? Because I missed it the first time. But it was an invitation to a play.
Oh, my gosh.
He wanted my attention. That's how he got it. He wanted an invitation to a play.
Wow.
Yeah, I did go and see the play. But oh, yes, I've had some amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. Just looking at time, we might move on to the fan questions, just so the fans don't. Yep. Yeah, otherwise they'll.
Oh no, they're the important ones. Without fans, with no show.
Yeah. Before we do, now, what was your thoughts when Prisoner ended? Obviously, you're at the show when it ended. What did you think could have gone on further, or you thought it was the right time for it to finish?
Well, as I said before, I think some of the storylines were starting to get a bit weird. You know, it had sort of lost a little bit of its impact, and so I think that's why it finished. You know, it had lost that pow that it had, sadly, and I think that probably came from the writing. You know, it needed still good, strong stories. So I think that's why that's why it finished. And it was very sad and very emotional, excuse me, when it finished, because it had been such a special show to work on. And I'd loved working on it. It was really, you know, it was, I mean, Neighbours was great, but I think working with Prisoner was the highlight of the shows that I'd cast, you know, because I was working with real actors, you know, and that's what I loved.
Yeah. Wow.
There's some questions here from Jan Robertson, who also is our producer, but she hails from Inverness in Scotland. And she says, my favourite character in Prisoner was Rita. Thank you so much for casting the sublime Glenda Linscott in the role. She also says, I loved the Kennedys, Scully and Hancock families in Neighbours. The actresses who played the Scully sisters looked very alike. Was that just a fluke? And the last thing is, I loved the little character of Emily Hancock in Neighbours. She was so cute. What made you choose Isabella Oldham for the role?
Oh, well, hello, Jan, because we've had a little bit of correspondence.
Yes, and thank you to Jan for actually putting this interview together, because she was
absolutely, she's marvelous.
Yeah.
She's a gem, absolute gem. So we've had a bit of correspondence backwards and forwards. So, Jan, it's my pleasure to answer your question. Now I've got to remember it all. Glenda Linscott, yes, I think I thought she was great too. I loved her character. And she, because she was so tall too, she really sort of took over some of those scenes with her strength and all that sort of thing. You know, she was great, and I loved Glenda. But she's not like that at all. She's a very lovely person, and you know, people tend to think that they are their character, you know, but no, they're not, because I think sometimes they sort of think, oh, they'll, you know, they see them out the street, they'll punch them up or something, you know, and you go, no. But she is, and in the Scully family, no, when putting a family together, you always try to find similarities, that they look similar. All right, sometimes in families they do look a little bit different, but most times you can find something that there is a similarity there, and that's what I love to do, putting a family together, was finding that those little similarities that would make you believe that they could be a family. And with the little Isabella, wasn't it? Isabella, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, trying to find little ones is not always easy. So that would take sometimes a bit of work, of casting around, trying to find little ones, because their attention span sometimes is not always great. And so I did a few auditions with little ones, and I would put them through a certain process of what they would have to do. And she came up trumps, and that's how she got the role.
Wow.
But it's always tricky with young ones.
Yeah. Wow.
Because you never know sometimes what they're going to do on set. So you've got to really understand them and know what their, you know, personalities are like, and what they're going to be able to do, and if they're going to be able to handle it and all that sort of thing. Because, you know, first thing that for them that goes is the lights. Their eyes go to the lights all the time.
Yeah.
You know, they're fascinated by the lights. And so you can't have that. You can't have them looking at the lights, you know. So you've got to work on a lot of things with little ones. So it's not always an easy. So I hope I've answered your questions, Jan. And thank you so much, darling.
Yes, we do appreciate her.
Yeah.
Peter Poyder Strauss says, this should be as great as an interview as Coral's. My question, was there a difference in your casting process from Prisoner to Neighbours?
Well, I mean, when you're casting a role, it's always very similar in the fact that you're always looking for the best actor for the role. And therefore, I mean, although as I mentioned before, with Prisoner, it was a whole different ball game, because you're looking at, you know, experienced, wonderful actors. Neighbours was a lot harder, because you had to look beyond that, because as I said, you know, a lot of them hadn't had a lot of experience. So you had to look to see how capable they were and how they could extend themselves. And that's what I mean about self-tests. When I would audition them, I would really push them to certain areas to see how they could cope and how they would go and take direction, to listen, to focus on what was happening in the scene. All of those things are so important, and to make everything believable and real. And these are the things that during Neighbours I had to do. It was different with, as I said, with Prisoner, although sometimes with Prisoner, because they'd done theatre and we're working in a different medium, sometimes initially in the audition process, it would be a bit strange to them. And therefore I'd just say to them, okay, we'll just do this, this and this. And that they would do it immediately because they knew exactly what I was talking about, and they would fall into it straight away.
Yeah.
But in Neighbours, it was that whole different area of going into sort of, you know, people who didn't have a lot of experience in acting or even in television. Some of them, you know, not even having been in a television studio. And as you know, Ken, sometimes, you know, when you, for the first time, if you've never been in a television studio, you know, people walk in and I mean, you're overwhelmed by everything that's going on. And not only that, if you're on set with you know, someone you've admired for years and you're doing a scene with them, and, you know, you've got the cameras, you've got the crew, you've got the lighting, you've got everything happening, you know, you're sort of going, oh my God, what's going on? And it's very difficult to focus. So you've got to have that focus and concentration, which is so important, you know, because you can lose yourself totally.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big thing. Oh, and thank you. I hope my interview has come up with Coral. I know what Coral's like. I mean, yes.
Coral Druin, yes.
Oh, yes. I think everybody's had a fight with Coral. Including me.
I include you as well. Are you guys friends or not?
Oh, yeah, we are now. Yeah.
I love Coral. She got some great stories.
She's a character. She's a character.
Brian Lee Whitworth.
She's living the life of Riley on the Gold Coast.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, she's great. Brian Lee Whitworth said, wow, TV royalty.
Oh, bless you, darling.
And Andrew Cook, who also posted on our Facebook page, said, you are an amazing lady. You casted him on Neighbours. Do you remember Andrew Cook?
No, that's...
He had a small part back in the day.
Right.
Yes.
Darling, I'd love to remember, but, you know, at this time in my life, finding it hard to remember. You know, I used to remember everybody's name, but this time in my life, it's a bit hard to remember that far back, especially names.
Here's a name to conjure with. Ashton Ashy Padalecki from Launceston in Tasmania says, was there anyone that you didn't end up casting in a show that went on to become big that you regret?
Well, excuse me, Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't get anyone bigger than him.
Yeah.
So he certainly was.
What do you think would have happened to his career if he did stay on Neighbours? This is where I kept bringing sliding doors in. Do you think he would have got...
Exactly. Who knows? Who knows what would have happened? I mean, you know, it's interesting, the different paths that are offered to us in life.
Yeah.
And the ones we take, excuse me, and the ones we don't take, and where we end up. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. Darren Hembrow said, no way, an amazing addition to these brilliant and fantastic interviews. And also Nikki Paul, who played Lisa Mullins on Prisoner, said, the loveliest casting director ever.
Oh, bless you, Nikki. Thank you, darling. Oh, she's a very special lady. Very special lady, love her.
Darren also said, and thank you for what you have done for us viewers and directing some of the best dramas ever.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been my pleasure and I have loved every minute of it. I've really enjoyed. Oh, sorry. I do apologise for this coughing because I've been in bed for about 4 days. I haven't got COVID, don't worry. It's just all up here. And so I've got all these drinks here to try and sort of settle myself down, but it keeps getting, you know, the throat.
Going around. I just got over it as well.
I've got a message from Christopher in Belfast, Ireland.
Oh, wow. Says,
no question. Just wanted to say a big thank you to Jan, such an amazing Australian TV legend. You have brought us some fantastic television icons. Lots of love from Christopher.
Oh, look, all these beautiful words bring me to tears because it's so nice to get that appreciation because I worked hard for those years and although I loved every minute of it, it's nice to get that little bit of appreciation and you are what it's all about. Thank you all so very much. You know, you warm my heart. Thank you.
Amazing. We've covered Ray Badrick's question, which was about Vivian Gray. So we move to Ken.
Steve Carpenter Brown says, wow, such a great guest. And know you have wanted to get Jan, and I know you have wanted to get Jan on for ages. My questions are, Aussie soaps were always criticised for recasting different actors to play the same characters. Were these recasts hard to do, and were you tempted to say, kill them off instead rather than recast? And the second question, was there ever a casting decision made that Jan regretted later? Well, we know that Hugh Jackman, for whatever reason, maybe they were better at the audition, maybe they were better at the audition than in the part, or were a problem on set, etc.
Oh well, that's happened a few times too.
He also says thanks, and because I saw you ask fans, do this, Matt. I am a Brit living in. Oh, he's a Brit living in New York City.
Oh,
loving
wow.
the podcast, by the way.
Wow. From New York, honey.
York. How are you, Steve?
Wow. No, I got so excited, I've forgotten what the question was.
He said, such a great guest, and I know you have wanted to get Jan on for ages. My questions are, Aussie soaps were always criticised for recasting different actors to play the same character.
Oh, yes. Sometimes there were some times where you felt like saying, no, get rid of them or send them off to, penitentiary or send them off to somewhere or other because, no, it's going to be too hard to find someone to replace. But there were times because of the storyline had been done so far ahead, you didn't have a choice. They couldn't kill them off. So I had to do recast. But it wasn't always easy to do because you had to once again find some form of similarity to the previous actor. You couldn't get them exactly the same, but there had to be some sort of similarity. I mean, it's pointless getting someone who was totally different. I mean, I know on some TV shows they've done that, which looks ridiculous, but I think it's got to find some sort of similarity. But yeah, there certainly were times I felt like saying, no, kill them off, write them out. Much easier for me.
I think one of the biggest recasts in Australian TV history was Pippa on Home and Away. Deborah Lawrence took over from Vanessa Downing, who played the original Pippa.
Right, yes.
They brought on Deborah Lawrence because Vanessa had had enough at the time and wanted out. And they didn't want to kill off the character of Pippa.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
I think also Rowena Wallace, I think was it Pat the Rat where they brought back Belinda Giblin? Yeah. There's been some big ones, hasn't there, in Australia?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, depending on sometimes, whether they decide they want to continue on the show suddenly or there's negotiation problems, that's been a lot of times.
Yeah.
Where they've demanded a lot more money than companies been prepared to pay, and they say, well, that's it, you take it or leave, basically.
Yeah.
Or they've got sick or something like that. That's always is the possibility. So yeah, there've been a few recasts.
Nikki Paul was one, wasn't she? She got sick on Prisoner, and they brought on Terry Waddell.
Yeah, we've had a few of them. Well, yes, because I was saying before, wasn't sure if there was anyone on Prisoner, but that was one. Yeah. So yes, we've had a few along the way because these things do happen,
Yeah.
Things happen to people that you don't expect. As I said, people get sick or they get a broken leg or whatever. So you've got to do quick rewrites to sort of adjust everything to fix it. Yeah.
Kate Reardon said, wow, what a great interview this will be. Question, who is Jan's favourite old neighbours? He, love Kate, Maddie and Joel.
Oh, do you know who they are? They're neighbours of mine.
Oh, they're neighbours. That's the real neighbours. Okay.
Oh, yeah. They're some of my neighbours.
Oh, there we go.
Who could I say is my favourite neighbours? Oh, I don't know, because as I said, I love them all. They're all my babies. All of the Neighbours cast in that time frame, I felt they were all my babies, and I just loved all of them. They're all special.
Yeah,
they're all very special. Yeah.
One from Andrew Birch, who lives in North Somerset in the UK. Hi, Jan. Which era and characters were you involved in casting in Prisoner? And thank you for doing this interview from Andrew.
Oh, Andrew. Now, as I said before, I know the ones which was Glenda Lynn Scott and Janet Andrew-Wather, all during that time, because I was on that show for like 18 months doing the casting. So it was during all that period. So they're the ones that that I think stand out in everybody's mind. They're a couple of the favourites, but there were, some of the male officers I had to cast, and some of the other guest roles. I'm just trying to remember a lot of the others.
Did you cast Peter Adams at the time?
No, that was before. My time.
That was before your time.
Yeah. Oh, Pete was great.
Yeah.
He was great. He was also a lovely musical theatre performer.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He did, what did he do? Sweet Charity? One of the shows he did. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, a lot of them had done a great deal of work beforehand.
Yeah, he was great on Prison. I mean, I loved him on Prison. He was only on it a short time, but yeah, what an actor.
Exactly. And sadly, he's sort of, passed, as a lot of them have,
Yeah.
But hey, I'm still here. Woo.
Yeah, don't go anywhere.
No, I'm not going anywhere.
Now, this is a comment from Jason Burridge. Well done, guys. Jan's contribution to Australian TV is pretty unsurpassed. I'm sure this interview will be a massive behind-the-scenes insight, and it has.
Well, I hope it has, guys, and gives you, some interesting things. And, I think of Jason, skating along on his skateboard down the passages of the studio, and guys sitting in the green room with his guitar, and all those things, Yep.
And how do you feel about seeing them all come back for the ending of?
Oh, I think it's amazing that they've all come back. It's fantastic. You know, it would be lovely to actually see them all personally, but it's lovely that they've all come back.
Yeah,
I think that's really special. I think the show will go out with a bang, a big bang.
Yeah. Now, who do you think's gonna? What do you think the ending of Neighbours is going to be?
Who knows? I know there's someone that's, you know, they're carrying out a coffin, aren't they?
Yes.
Mm.
Or
Ooh. Who knows? It could be anyone, you know. I don't know. You all keep us guessing, won't it, until we know who it is.
Can we watch it? Yeah. Yeah. One thing I do think is wrong is they're not putting the final episode on Channel 10. It's on the
yes,
Peach or whatever it's called.
Peach, whatever. Yes, yeah. Yes, it is. It is a shame they're not putting it on 10 to finish off. Yeah. But isn't it interesting that both those shows, Prisoner and Neighbours, were Channel 10?
Yeah. Big
those Channel 10 shows. And all done out at Nunawading.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, remember the Prisoner, remember that Ken, the brick building out the back? We used to have Wentworth detention.
Yes.
So,
that was
climb up top there. They were filming. They had to climb up there at one stage, and then they had the garden out on the back set.
That's right.
You know, the vegetable garden that the prisoners used to go and work on. It was quite interesting, I think, for anyone visiting to go and see all of that. You know.
Well, they do.
I love, yeah, exactly. But I loved, you know, sometimes the sets would sort of go, you know, but you didn't worry about that. I mean, it's interesting that the difference between Prisoner and Wentworth.
Did you watch Wentworth?
Not really. It didn't, to me, have the same feel. To me, it didn't have the warmth that Prisoner had.
Yeah.
You know, Prisoner still had warmth. I think that made a difference. It was interesting. I saw one of the American version of Women Behind Bars or something, was it? And I couldn't believe it was typically American because, you know, the prisoners or their uniforms were ironed beautifully.
Oh, that's nice.
They all had full makeup with the eyelashes and the hairs were all, you know, hair was all beautifully done. And you went, what? They don't look like, you know, prisoners. Yeah. It was, you know, it was crazy. It's crazy. And that's why, you know, Prisoner, because it was so real.
Yeah.
And I remember when we even went to, we were taken to Fairley Women's Prison to check that out.
Oh, did you go?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah. It was interesting. It was sort of like a motel, and the children came outside and were taken off to school because the mothers had the children in the prison.
Yeah.
And we went in and, you know, had a look around and all of that. It was sort of like, you know, just like a motel. But it felt really sad when you saw the children.
Yeah.
There and being taken off to school outside the fences and things like that, you know. But it was interesting. But it certainly wasn't like the sets we had. It certainly wasn't like the sets we had. Yeah. Exactly. Yes.
Interesting. You talked about the Wentworth detention sign that was on the building. That sold a while ago for about $8,000 to a fan in the US.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's still it's in someone's. I think he's actually on our Facebook page. It's actually in his garage. Yeah.
Wow.
I get a photo of it actually.
Oh, well, we know who's got it then, don't we? Mm-hmm.
I'd love to know where the steam press is, actually. That would be iconic. The steam press.
Oh, those steam presses. Oh my God, yes. Some of them got their hands caught in those a few times, didn't they?
I've got a message from Joe Hendry from London. What a legend. I wonder, does being an actor make you a better casting director? What's the process for deciding who gets cast for a specific role? And what did you think of the reference in Kath and Kim about you casting Epona Ray in Neighbours?
Epony Ray.
Well, it's written here as Epone, but...
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a take on the posh of Kathy. Yeah.
Exactly. Look, because I've had that acting background of many years, I think it's very important as a casting person to have that background, because you know how you can push and extend an actor, you know what they're capable of doing. Even in an audition process, if you need to push them a bit further to see how they go, you know what you can do, and you know that actors are very vulnerable people too. So you've also got to hold their hand a little bit as well, and so that's where, your understanding of having that background myself as an actor has been very important, and I think has helped me in my role as a casting director. And this is what I think a lot of, I'm not speaking out of turn, but I think this is what some casting directors don't have. So they don't fully have that comprehension of really knowing about an actor, and I think that's important. With the Epony Ray, I didn't know that was happening. And I think I was watching it that night, and I sort of did a bit of a double take myself. And of course, it's been replayed a few times. So I have people constantly contacting me saying, "Oh, we heard, your name on Kath and Kim," and I know because Jane Turner, I cast her in Prisoner.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Wow.
And so she always sort of says, that I gave her opportunity as well. So,
Wow.
and I think that's, that was one of the reasons. So yes, yeah.
She played the blind prisoner on Prisoner.
Yes.
Yeah, pretending to be blind. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And so, the role of a casting director I think was what they wanted to know as well. Well, the role of the casting director is really to know as many actors as possible. That's your job, to know as many actors, because you've got to find them for the roles.
Yeah.
And to be able to audition them and get them to do a good job, to do the best job that they can, because you want to be able to employ people. If they're not doing the best job, well, you're not going to be able to employ them. So it's, I always felt, as I said before, it was important that I would go out and scout around and find, I would even do workshops. And I flew to New Zealand at one stage. I flew all around Australia.
Wow.
Well, I did that dolly competition already.
I was going to ask you about that. How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, I think Dolly approached the company. We also had one McDonald's one as well. So we had two, and people had to send in their tapes. Well, I tell you, I had thousands of tapes, and I had to go through all the tapes. I mean, they sort of suggested that, I will get someone to help you and go through the tapes. I said, no. I said, I've got to do it myself. I've got to go through it. And it took me a long time to do it. But I went through all the tapes and chose different ones. And then we toured the different shopping centres in the different states around Australia. And they all did their scenes. And then a winner was chosen. So two of them was one was Adelaide Kane, who was into Neighbours and now is working in the US. It's very successful, doing lots of TV shows and films and things. And another one was Sam Clark, and I think Sam's gone more into his music, things like that. And a lot of others. In fact, it was interesting because I went to see The Wedding Singer, a musical here in Melbourne. And after the show, was having sort of drinks, and some of the cast came out, and someone introduced me to the lead guy. And he said, "Oh, Jan Russ," he said, "I was in the McDonald's competition." He said, "I sent my tape in," and he said, "You got me in, you auditioned me," and he said, "You even gave me a role." And then he's gone on and he's playing the lead role in The Wedding Singer.
Oh, how
And
amazing.
one that, came from the McDonald's tour. So I thought that was a great little story as well. So that was lovely to hear. He was that excited to meet me and said, "Oh, yeah." And who was the other one? Oh, Anthony Kalea, because he said, I was singing at a competition in one of the shopping centres when he was young, and I went up to him and said, you've got something there, and handed him my business card, and he reminded me of that a few years ago. So yes, it's different ones that have gone on to different things that I've sort of been a small part in their lives.
That's amazing. Wow. Mark Wilson Ma said, "What were the initial plans for Neighbours? Was it always going to be what we saw in the very first episode?"
Well, yes, Mark. It was the fact that it was family orientated, supporting each other in the street, and that's, I think, what Reg wanted. And I mean, obviously over the years it's gone off in other other areas, because we've had different producers. We've had so many producers over the years, good and bad, I may add, and certainly while I was there, and so they all like to put their little change in, and so it's changed from its original concept. And although life has moved on, I think you can still keep that context, but still move into the future. And I think that's sort of, been lost a bit along the way.
Yeah, I was saying that to Ken before you came on. We were talking about. I said I watched a few episodes of Neighbours just recently, and it is so different to I grew up on Neighbours as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and I loved it. But now it's so different.
Exactly. But it's like every other show. It's not. And I think that's what made Neighbours different and special, because people could associate so much with what was happening on the show. Exactly. It was their life.
Yeah,
exactly. And that was helped make the success of the show. And that was what it was like all during the 80s and the height of the show.
Yeah.
It was huge. And, I mean, Lord, we had, all the British newspapers coming over trying to dig up dirt on all the actors and all that sort of thing, which was extraordinary. And I had to sit in on all the interviews because I had to be a witness to anything that was said, because they were going around with affidavits and all sorts of things and giving money to people trying to find, dirt on any of the actors. And, it was an extraordinary time. But, of course, they never did, because all the actors were, good kids. There was nothing they could find on them, So I think they did found one. There was one I can remember, and it was Myra de Groot, and there was a big headline saying, "Stars' sordid sex life." You go, "Oh my God!" And then it was in the Truth,
the Truth
paper. And then you open the paper, and I mean, it was some ridiculous little story that had nothing really to do with any of that, but it was this. And after that, I think everybody really put their foot down with that paper, because it was really, that was not kosher.
That's what all those magazines do now, though. I mean, I know I had one magazine approach me about someone that we're working on something, and they go, well, if you don't give us a story, we'll just write about it anyway. We'll just put our own thing on it.
That's it. But I think what happened in the 80s, when the British press came over here and they were throwing money around and all that sort of thing, I think that's where journalism changed here as well. And that's where they started going, oh, well, we've got to get a bit of dirt going on, or we've got to pay people because this is what the British press are doing, because before that it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
It was all good and wholesome. But that time was a pretty hairy time.
Wow. Crazy.
Now, the last one from Joshua Bullmore says, well, you've partially answered this, but what was it like going overseas, casting for new characters for the show?
Oh, well, overseas, I went to New Zealand. I suppose that is overseas, yes. And well, that was interesting, because I had lived in New Zealand, so and worked over there, so it wasn't a new thing for me. And so I had contacts over there, and so I think I brought back 3 actors: Michelle Ang, Jay, and the other actor too. But brought back 3 of them to go into Neighbours, and they came home. They all did a great job, but they moved on to other things. I think Jay is overseas. He changed his name, and he's doing lots of amazing things overseas. But that was an interesting concept. It only happened once. I only did that once, to go overseas to New Zealand. But it was a lot of people obviously wanted to audition, because they thought the fact of coming to Australia was going to be a big break for them. So it was siphoning a lot of people to get what I wanted.
Now it's the other way around. Everyone wants to get to America.
Exactly. I know. And you sort of think, these young ones, they sort of think, oh, well, if they do a gig on a show and they say, oh, well, I'm going to go to America now, or I'm going to go to England. And you go, it's not that easy in America, and it's not that easy in England. In America, you've got to be a triple, quadruple threat there.
Yeah.
And in England, you have to, because you're competing with a heck of a lot more people than you are here, and with a lot more experienced people in both of those countries, particularly in England, because their training is phenomenal. And I mean, even in the States, they have incredible training. You see, like someone like Neil Patrick Harris can sing, can dance. He's a magician or something, isn't he? And something else.
Really.
He's does about 4 or 5 things,
And people don't often remember about him is he played, you remember Doogie Howser? He played that kid doctor.
Absolutely. And he's done all sorts of things, but he's capable of doing things because he's had amazing training. Yeah. And, you can't just do a soapy and think, well, I've made it now. I'm going to go and I'm going to be a big star in America or England, because, you're going to big countries that have well-trained and many more people going for the roles. Although I must say, in America, I know a lot of the Aussies have done well over there. And I did go years ago. I decided, because I hadn't done it in my youth, I went to Stella Adler Studios to do a bit of training there. And I thought, well, they didn't have that around in my time. So I thought, no, I'm going to do it, which was wonderful time. I loved it. And the director of Stella Adler and one of the agents took me out for dinner, and we're out having dinner, and the agent said, oh, one of my clients is coming. Is that okay? And I said, oh, yes. So she came and we chatted. And then the the waitress came up and she was very, very attractive. And we said, oh, I bet she's an actress. And we said to her, you an actress? And she said, yes, I am. And I said, well, what have you done? What have you? She said, oh, I've just finished the Help movie. And she said, I'm heading off in 3 days down south to do another movie. And yet she was still working as a waitress.
Yeah, and that's what they did back then, didn't they? I mean, they.
And another thing that she did, she started talking to the other client and saying, oh, what are you doing? Da-di-da-di-da. And they go, oh, right, okay. And they were exchanging numbers and cards and saying, oh, you should contact this person, that person. I went, this is beautiful. This is fantastic. I loved seeing that they were supporting each other. They weren't going, well, I'm not telling you because you might get the role over me. You know? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So so that was an interesting time too. I sort of learned a lot about actors there, but I also think that Aussies have done well there because we're still a bit, you know, the guys are still a bit like John Wayne here. Over there, they're all the, you know, pretty boys that had so much Botox and everything done to their faces. And our boys are still sort of a bit rugged and real. And I told this to the agent and he went, yeah, you're right, Jan, you're right, yeah. And same with the women. Look at the success of Jackie Weaver.
Yeah.
I mean, phenomenal at her time in life. And look, every time you just about turn on, she's in another movie.
Yeah.
How fantastic is that? You know, and she's just being Jackie in the age she is, doing that. Mate. I mean, it's wonderful. Mm.
You mentioned it was a Stella Adler school that you went to.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been like going to the Lee Strasberg school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty huge.
Oh yeah, it was. It was fabulous. I loved every second of it. I really enjoyed it. And even in the building where they were, there was this little room that they took me into. And it was all sort of closed. And I said, what's this room for? And they said, you know, when the Prohibition was on in America, I used to go into that room like Audrey Hepburn and all of those people to go into that room so they could have a drink.
Oh, wow.
And it was all closed. So nobody knew that room was there. It's not on the map, but was a little drinking place during the Prohibition times. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And that was, yeah, there was a lot of, you know, interesting stuff around that time. And yeah, I mean, I think America is an interesting place. And I know people have gone there and been successful, but others have gone there and, you know, it's cost them a lot of money.
Yeah. And
they've come home and, you know, it hasn't worked for them.
Wow.
So it's taking a big chance. And I can remember a time at someone saying, you know, when it's the pilot season, the buses here are packed with wannabe actors going to America.
Wow.
You know, and it's a big thing because you've really got to have something behind you to show what you've done. Yeah. You know, they're not going to take an inexperienced actor or someone that's done 3 months on a soap. You know, they want someone that's, you know, worthwhile. I mean, I think Alan Dale has done very well.
Yeah.
In America. But after he finished Neighbours, he went and had acting classes.
Oh, wow.
He went and had acting classes.
Wow.
And then he'd done a movie, and I think that movie helped him get into America.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Forever learning.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, you never stop. It's just because you're in a role and, you know, you're successful in that role, that doesn't mean you don't have to learn. It's you know, being an actor is constantly learning and working on your craft. Yeah. You know, you never, ever stop. And you've just got to look at the Americans and the English. They never stop doing classes. They're always doing classes. You know, even the top big names. But, here I think they think, sometimes they think, oh, I've made it, I don't have to do anything more. You've got to hone your craft to perfection all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing advice.
Yeah. It's important. If you want to be successful, you've got to keep working.
Definitely. Last comment from Andrew Stripes said legend. Now, on the back of that, I have to say the word legend nowadays gets thrown around so many times. This person's a legend, that person's a legend.
Yeah.
But you are a legend. And you're a legend of Australian TV. And I, as a fan myself, because that's all I am, is I thank you for everything you've done in your contribution to Australian TV and all the characters that you've cast and all the careers you've kickstarted. I mean, without you, I don't think there would have been all these people on TV. And so a big thank you to you. You are a legend. And thank you very much. And it's been an absolute honor to just spend these last few hours with you and learn about your career and your life. And I'll be forever thankful for that experience. If anything else.
That's beautiful. That means a lot, because sometimes I think I've been forgotten.
No.
And it's nice to know people still remember me.
Definitely. Most
very special. So thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I send lots of love to you all, because you are the fans, and without you fans, there's not a show. It doesn't matter how good it is. If we don't have viewers, that show is ended. So you are important. So thank you all for your loyalty, and bless you all. And thank you, Matt, and thank you, Ken. It's been an absolute delight.
It has. Anything you'd like to add, Ken, before I wrap up?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of Hugh Jackman.
You speak to Hugh today?
Oh, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you. Good seeing you again.
Thank you. Now, that was episode 44 of Talking Prisoner. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and share this amazing interview everywhere you can. Please also like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter page. Please also follow Jan and get her over 20,000 followers on Instagram. And this episode of Talking Prisoner will be available across all the podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and wherever else you get your podcast, and the talkingprisoner.com website.